before the Neanderthals, the initial occupation of Western Europe or Western Eurasia. Although Dmanisi at the eastern edge of Europe has evidence of occupation going back approximately 1.7 million years, hominin sites more than 500,000 years old in Western Europe are rare. However, the 500,000-year barrier has been dramatically shattered by research at a system of caves located at Atapuerca in north-central Spain. The construction of a railroad through the hill at Atapuerca exposed the Gran Dolina, which is a massive cave filled with 18 meters of deposits. Archaeologists, perched on an elaborate system of scaffolding, have swarmed over the Gran Dolina sequence, digging into 11 archaeological levels that have been dated by paleomagnetism and electron spin resonance. In the TD6 level, dated to 800,000 years ago, a rich collection of stone tools and fossil bones was recovered, along with 30 hominin fragments. There is growing evidence for hominin occupation in Spain as early as 1 million years ago. Again, Gran Dolina is a cave in Spain where stone tools and hominin remains dated to 800,000 years ago. These artifacts are the oldest reliable evidence of human occupation of Western Europe, and that is Atapuerca. The stone tools from Gran Dolina, Atapuerca, TD6 are flakes and cores. The hominin remains from TD6 have been classified as a new species, Homo antecessor. Because most of the remains are fragmentary and the single fairly complete skull is of a juvenile, further discoveries are needed in order to confirm the identification of the species. Another early site in Western Europe is Isernia, La Pinta in Italy, dating to more than 700,000 years ago. In the Set 1 T.3a level, a dense occupation layer of stone tools and animal bones was found covering an area of 24 square meters. Over 1,000 stone tools were discovered, mostly simple flakes made on poor quality stone. The animal bones included the remains of bears, elephants, rhinos, bison, and deer. The Acheulean in Europe and Asia. In East Asia, chopper and flake tools characterize most lower Paleolithic sites. Paradoxically, the earliest date for an Acheulean industry anywhere outside of Africa is at the site of Bose in China, or Bose. Bose is also the only site in China where hand axes have been uncovered. The artifacts at Bose are found in a river terrace in a stratigraphic unit that varies between 25 and 100 centimeters in thickness. Argon dating of tektites, or small fragments of glass formed by meteor impacts, found with the tools has dated the site to 800,000 years ago. As with volcanic ash and lava, argon dating determines when the glass was formed. Other than Bose, the earliest well-dated Acheulean site outside of Africa is Gesher Beno Yaakov, Israel, located to the north of the Sea of Galilee and the northern extension of the East African Rift Valley. Dated to 780,000 years ago, Gesher Beno Yaakov is similar to African Acheulean sites. Bifaces are made on very large flakes, and hand axes and cleavers are common. The excavations at Gesher Beno Yaakov have also produced limited evidence for the use of fire and for the cracking of nuts. It is beginning only 500,000 years ago that Acheulean sites became common across Europe, in the Middle East, and on into the Indian subcontinent, the geographic region known as Eurasia. There is regional variation in the Eurasian Acheulean, but taken as a whole, these industries show some significant contrast with the African Acheulean. Cleavers are almost completely absent from the Eurasian Acheulean, and hand axes are the major type of biface. Again, the Eurasian Acheulean is a stone tool industry found on sites throughout the Middle East and Europe beginning 500,000 years ago. The hand axe is the characteristic tool of this industry. And in regard to that, an Acheulean site in Israel dating to 780,000 years ago has produced limited evidence for the use of and for fire and the cracking of nuts. And again, Europe, the Middle East, and the Indian subcontinent is the geographic region known as Eurasia. Another characteristic of the Eurasian Acheulean is that the hand axes were often part of a toolkit that also included retouched flakes, flakes that were modified after being struck off the core. The characteristic type of flake tool is the side scraper, in which one or two edges of the flake have been regularized and strengthened by retouching. Boxgrove is one of the oldest known Acheulean sites in all of Europe. It is located in England, and it dates to around 500,000 years ago. Again, it is located in West Sussex in southern England, and it is one of the most earliest known Acheulean sites in Europe and one of the most extensively excavated as well. On the basis of the animal species represented in the faunal assemblage, the site is dated to 500,000 years ago. The hominin occupation of Boxgrove appears to have been close to the shore of a small lake near the sea. The stone tools include the debris from hand axe manufacture, which, when refit, provides a detailed picture of the process involved in making these tools. The hand axes found at Boxgrove were shaped with both hard and soft hammers. Experiments in which an experienced butcher was given a replicated hand axe to use showed that these tools would have been served very well to skin and butcher carcasses. Animal bones from the site, including the bones of a large horse, have traces of tool cut marks, and whether or not these animals were hunted, hominins did have early access to the carcasses. No evidence for the use of fire or of a base camp has been found at Boxgrove. Not all sites in Europe dating later than 500,000 years ago have produced hand axes. The Clactonian is an industry in England of simple flake tool contemporary with the Acheulean. Some have argued that Clactonian sites are simply Acheulean hand axe manufacturing sites from which the finished products are absent. This idea has been refuted, however, and it is now clear that the Clactonian is distinct from the Acheulean. In Eastern Europe, a number of lower Paleolithic sites have produced flake tool industries. Vertes is a particularly rich site located in Hungary, dated to 350,000 years ago. The stone tools at Vertes are choppers and retouched flakes. The variation in lower Paleolithic industries is modest compared with that found in latter periods, but it is nonetheless real. The patterns of variation that do exist confound some of our expectations and prove difficult to explain. One would expect that all groups would rapidly adopt the Acheulean technology. However, this is clearly not the case. The site of Bos has produced the oldest known hand axes outside of Africa. However, hand axe manufacture never became widespread among early hominins in East Asia. In Europe, however, Acheulean industries appeared only 500,000 years ago, hundreds of thousands of years after the first arrival of hominins. And so even after the widespread appearance of hand axes in Europe and Western Asia, there were industries such as the Clactonian that did not involve hand axe manufacture. During the stage of the lower Paleolithic, beginning around 500,000 years ago, there are a series of subtle new features in the archaeological record. The limited collection of European and African hominin fossils from this period are often grouped under the species Homo heidelbergensis. However, many question whether this is in fact a single species. And again, just to recap, the Clactonian is a simple flake tool industry contemporary with the Acheulean in England. In Asia, Homo erectus appears to continue through this period. Zhaokurian is a series of caves in Longgu Shan, or Dragon Bone Hill, outside of Beijing, or Peking, China. Since excavations began at the cave known as Locality 1 in the early 1920s, the remains of more than 40 Homo erectus individuals and over 100,000 stone tools, all choppers and flakes, have been recovered. The hominins from Zhoukudian, also known as Peking Man, are the center of one of the unsolved mysteries of archaeology. After Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in the Second World War, an attempt was made to get the fossils out of Peking, which was under Japanese occupation. In the confusion of war, the fossils were lost, and no trace of them has ever reappeared. Unfortunately, accurate casts of most of the fossils were saved. And again, Zhaokurian is a series of caves right outside of Beijing or Peking in Longshan, where the remains of more than 40 Homo erectus individuals and over 100,000 stone choppers and flakes were recovered. Locality 1 at Zucudian is an absolutely massive site. The scale of the early excavations was more like a mining operation than what we expect from a modern archaeological project. The total depth of the deposits at Locality 1 is 48 meters, which has been divided into 17 layers. The dating of the site is extremely complex. However, most studies agree that the hominin occupation occurred between 500,000 and 300,000 years ago. Recent dating of Zucudian by the newly developed cosmogenic burial age dating method suggests that the site might actually be as much as 750,000 years old. Locality 1 at Zucudian has long been thought to provide the earliest evidence for the use of fire. The most important evidence comes from layer 10, which has been described as an ash layer. However, recent research has demonstrated that there is no ash layer in layer 10, and that what had been identified as ash is actually organic material brought in by a river that ran through the cave. Similar conclusions have been reached concerning the evidence of burning in layer 4. The only evidence suggestive of the controlled use of fire by hominins at Zucudian Locality 1 is the occurrence of burnt bones together with stone tools. Although evidence of fire has been identified at the Akalian site of Gesher Beno Yaakov in Israel, in general terms, the use of fire dating during the Lower Paleolithic was rare. The most compelling evidence for the use of fire in the Lower Paleolithic comes from the site of Beech's Pit in England, which is dated to 400,000 years ago. At Beech's Pit, there are rarely discrete areas where a concentration of charred bones and stone tools was found. However, the possibility of natural fire cannot be completely ruled out, since burnt lizard and rat bones were found along with the bones of large mammals. There is nonetheless strong support for a controlled use of fire by the hominins occupying the site. The evidence of fire is found only in strata in which artifacts are present, and it is restricted to small, shallow depressions. At Qasim Cave in Israel, occupied around 300,000 years ago, excavations have uncovered the remains of hearths that included preserved wood ash. Anatomical studies of living humans, including detailed studies of the biomechanics of baseball pitching, suggest that modern humans have evolved adaptations for throwing. When a pitcher's arm is cocked, energy is stored and then released during the throw. Studies of fossils suggest that this anatomical adaptation is found in Homo erectus. The archaeological record is beginning to yield evidence for the emergence of thrown weapons such as spears. Excavations in a coal mine at Schnaningen, Germany, have uncovered 3 spruce spears, together with a rich collection of stone tools and animal bones dating to around 400,000 years ago. The unique context of this site allowed for the preservation of these wooden artifacts. The spears vary between 1.8 and 2.2 meters in length and between 29 and 47 millimeters in diameter. Another piece, which is pointed on both ends as opposed to the spears, which are pointed only at one end, is 0.8 meters long. The spears are well made and balanced, but do not appear to have had a stone tip or any decoration. The excavator interprets them as projectiles. At the site of Katu Pan in South Africa, the stone tools from a level dated to 500,000 years ago seem to anticipate the kinds of technological advances that are found in Europe with the advent of the Neanderthals. Among the tools uncovered at Katu are pointed flakes. The tips on some of these tools were fractured by high-velocity impact, identical to the fractures found on replicated spear tips used in experiments. The Katu Pan evidence suggests that at the beginning, 500,000 years ago, hominins in Africa used stone-tipped spears. There is very little evidence of either artwork or ritual behavior in lower Paleolithic contexts. 2 exceptions to this generalization deserve particular mention. The first is a small pebble of volcanic rock found at the lower Paleolithic site of Barakat Ram, Golan Heights. The excavator of Barakat Ram discerned signs of work on this stone and identified it as a representation of a human female. Because the site is more than 230,000 years old, the stone is probably the earliest evidence of human representation. Subsequent research has confirmed that the pebble was indeed worked by the incision of a single line. Whether the intention was to create a figurine remains unclear. A very intriguing discovery is a shell from a site in Indonesia dating from between 540,000 and 430,000 with a simple grid design incised on the outside surface. This discovery points to how poor our knowledge is of the lower Paleolithic of Southeast Asia and the need for further research to contextualize this surprising artifact. The only significant evidence for special treatment of the dead during the lower Paleolithic comes from a cave at Atapuerca known as Cima de los Huesos, which is dated to 300,000 years ago. In this pit, the complete remains of 27 hominid individuals were recovered. Only one stone tool, a well-made quartz hand axe, has been found in this cave. There is no evidence of human occupation of Cima de los Huesos, nor is there evidence that it was an accessible cave. It appears to have been a crevice in the rock in which the inhabitants were cave bears and other carnivores. The excavators argue that the hominids were not brought to the cave by carnivores and that the cave was not a natural crevice into which they fell. Rather, they interpret Cima de los Huesos as a place where corpses were placed as part of a funerary ritual, and they construe the hand axe to be a funerary offering. Unlike this scenario suggested for the much earlier Rising Star Cave in South Africa, where the bodies are thought to have been placed deep in the ground, it is thought that at Cima de los Huesos, the corpses were thrown into this chasm. The excavators suggested that the large number of corpses reflects a burial of the victims of an ecological crisis. There is evidence of a carnivore gnawing on almost half of the human bones. These gnaw marks include the actions of a small fox-sized animal and a larger lion-sized animal. There is no evidence that the corpses were buried. It is interesting that one of the skulls from Cima de los Huesos has traces of 2 blows delivered to the upper forehead, which appear to be the result of fatal blows from a single weapon.